Okay, so have you ever really stopped to wonder how your mind actually works? Today, we're going to dive deep into cognitive science and break it all down into three huge ideas that basically shape our entire understanding of how we think.
I mean, seriously, how do you recognize a friend in a packed room? Or learn a totally new skill? Or get that sudden rush of happiness? These aren't just, philosophical questions. They are the actual puzzles that cognitive science is trying to solve every single day.
And here's a wild thought to kick us off. You are already an expert in this stuff. Yeah, you. Every single time you read a friend's facial expression or figure out the best way to study for an exam, you're using the exact cognitive processes that scientists spend their entire careers trying to understand. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll get a quick definition of what cognitive science even is. Then we'll jump into our three big ideas: why it's a total team effort, how we've moved past thinking of the mind as just a computer, and the research blueprint that holds it all together. And then we'll wrap up with the key things you'll want to remember. All right, so what is cognitive science? Put simply, it's the science of the mind. It's the whole field dedicated to figuring out how we think, how we learn, and how we make our way through the world. And that brings us right to our first big idea. You see, cognitive science isn't just one field working alone in a lab. Nope, it's a team sport. Its real power comes from bringing a ton of different fields together. And what that means is it's a true collaboration. The human mind is it's incredibly complex, right? So to even begin to understand it, you need experts from all over, each bringing their own unique tools and ways of looking at the problem. No one field has all the answers. So, who's on this all-star team? Well, you've got psychologists studying our behavior. Neuroscientists are in there mapping the brain's activity. Linguists are decoding the mysteries of language. You've got philosophers asking those giant questions about consciousness. And computer scientists using AI to build models of how we think. And you can't forget anthropologists, who show us just how much our culture shapes our minds.
And when this team works together, you get some amazing insights. Take code switching, for example. That's when people who speak more than one language mix them together in a conversation. For a long time, people thought it was a sign of confusion. But by combining linguistics and anthropology, we now know it's actually a super sophisticated skill that shows incredible social and linguistic awareness. That's a discovery you only make through teamwork.
Okay, on to our second big idea. This one's about how our whole view of the mind has changed. For a really long time, the main metaphor was that the mind is like a computer. But we've come to realize it's so much more than just a machine. I mean, this shift is huge. The old mind as a computer idea saw thinking as just crunching data, processing symbols, totally separate from the real world. The modern view, it's so much richer. It recognizes that our minds are embodied. They're connected to our physical bodies, and they are massively influenced by our emotions and the people around us. Thinking doesn't happen in a vacuum. And if you want a perfect everyday example, just look at social media algorithms. They don't just look at data points. They are specifically designed to tap into your emotions and your social world, to influence what you see, what you buy, maybe even what you think. That is the mind in the world in action, every time you scroll. So, if the mind is this complicated, messy thing, how do we study it scientifically? Well, that brings us to our third big idea: the research blueprint. This is all about why having a solid theoretical framework is the absolute backbone of good science. Think of a theoretical framework like the blueprint for a building. It's the structure. It gives scientists the way to organize their ideas, connect them to what we already know, and, this is the important part, make predictions and figure out what their results actually mean. Without these frameworks, you don't really have science. They make sure we're building on past knowledge, not just reinventing the wheel. They guide the design of a study so that the results are actually trustworthy. They help us go from just what is happening to why it's happening. And ultimately, that's what gives the research its credibility. Here's a really powerful example of this in the real world: stereotype threat theory. This framework predicts that if you're aware of a negative stereotype about a group you belong to, the anxiety you feel about confirming that stereotype can actually make you perform worse. See? A strong theory doesn't just describe something, it explains the why behind it and makes predictions you can actually go out and test. Phew, we've covered a lot of ground. So let's just boil this all down into the key takeaways. These are the things you really want to lock in about the science of the mind. So here they are. Number one, cognitive science is a team sport. You need all those different fields to get the full picture. Two, the mind is not just a computer. It's tied to our bodies, our emotions, and our social world. Three, those theoretical frameworks, they're the essential blueprints that make the research solid and believable. And finally, number four, knowing all this helps you become a better critical thinker, so you can actually evaluate all the claims you hear about the mind out there in the world.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Now that you've got a little peek behind the curtain of how scientists study the mind, what's the one question about your own thinking, your own memories, your decisions, your feelings that you'd want them to answer? Think about it. Thanks for tuning in.